Welcome back to another episode of the Crime Scene Insiders. I'm one of your hosts, Angela Davies, and I'm here with my co-host, Dion Watson, and we're going to take you back under the barrier tape. So before we get into today's episode, we've got some really big news for you. Dee and I are going to be joining the lineup at CrimeCon Birmingham on the 25th of April 2026. And then we'll be back again for CrimeCon London on the 3rd and 4th of October 2026. Birmingham is a brand new stop for CrimeCon UK, and it's already shaping up to be something special. We're going to be there alongside some of the most recognisable voices and experts in true crime for a full immersive day of stories, insight and conversations. Tickets are limited for Birmingham, so make sure you get yours as soon as possible to avoid disappointment.
And then we're going to be taking everything to the next level in London, which is another chance to meet, chat theories and dig deeper into the cases that we cover. Whether you've been listening to us since the beginning or you've only just discovered us, we'd love for you to say hello at either event. Or, better yet, come and say hi at both. Hang out with us and the rest of the true crime community at CrimeCon Birmingham and CrimeCon London. Partnered by the True Crime Channel, the expert-led true crime channel available wherever you listen. Just head over to crimecon.co.uk and use our promo code INSIDERS for 10% off your ticket.
Announcements about guest speakers and content creators are being released on the CrimeCon UK social channels, so keep your eyes peeled. 2 cities, 2 incredible events. We can't wait to see you there. And now for this week's episode.
Today, we are going to be discussing the murder of Alan Wood. And we were first introduced to this case by our fantastic CSI guest, Justine Shanahan, back in episode 22. And Justine very briefly touched upon it in that episode, but we wanted to follow up and cover it for a number of different reasons, didn't we, Ange?
We did, yeah, because surprisingly, we hadn't heard of this case. And we were quite shocked, weren't we, when we realised we hadn't, because it is such a big case.
It really is. And it's actually one of Lincolnshire's most brutal crimes. And it's still unsolved to this day. So we wanted to cover it to help raise awareness because the killer is still out there, as we say, and somebody somewhere knows something about this. It's also an absolutely fascinating case to us for a number of different reasons, isn't it?
Yeah, it's just unusual in so many ways. I mean, firstly, it's a stranger murder, which stranger murders are not that common, are they? A lot of people think that they are, but actually, sadly, more often than not, when people are assaulted or murdered, it's usually by somebody that they know or are related to.
Yeah, that's the truth of it, isn't it? That's awful to think about, but that is the truth of it. So this is really unusual in that instance. Also, there was an absolutely horrendous level of violence used within this as well.
Yeah.
And that level of violence isn't often seen, particularly when we also take into account that this took place in a very small hamlet in Lincolnshire. So that sort of environment and those sort of sleepy little villages, you don't often see crime like this take place either, do you?
No, they normally obviously got really tight-knit communities where everybody knows everybody. So if outsiders are coming in, people normally recognise, oh, they're not from round here, they're not from round here. Which again, I suppose is something that we'll come to talk about is we believe it was a stranger attack, but actually was it potentially somebody that did know Alan in one way or another? We're just not so sure, are we? But like you say, those sleepy villages, crime like this and of this level of violence is really unusual.
It is. It must have been such a huge shock to everyone when this happened. And one of the other really unusual things about this case is it's not through lack of evidence. There's a significant amount of evidence, both from the crime scene and from the police investigation that's came out, isn't there?
Yeah, and again, like you say, that's quite unusual because I think normally the amount of evidence that there is in this case, people would expect it to be solved. It must be quite a difficult one for the officers that have worked on this case back in 2009. So again, we're going to go into more detail, but for instance, there's a full DNA profile that's been taken from the scene. And often when you get a DNA profile, people think, oh, that's it, solved, which again, we'll come on to discuss in more detail later. But the amount of evidence in this case for it to still be unsolved is really unusual.
It is quite shocking, really. So, before we get into the nitty gritty of the case, we thought we would first of all have a look at Alan himself and think about who he was as a person. Alan was the eldest of three children, and he was brought up in Lincolnshire with his two sisters, Janice and Sylvia. And at the time of his death, Alan lived in a small hamlet of Lound near Bourne, and he was 50 years old at the time of his death. He was described by his family, friends, and colleagues as a quiet, easygoing, really gentle man who was just loved by everyone he came into contact with, by all accounts.
Yeah, and it's one of the things that makes this case really sad, isn't it? Because all the research we've done and everything we've looked at, there's not a bad word said about him.
No.
Literally everybody says what a gentle, kind-hearted man he is, what a caring man. And even the landlady of his local pub describes him as a teddy bear. And again, that's another reason that it's so unusual, because he didn't really have any known enemies. He wasn't disliked. He was really well liked and loved throughout his community. And so again, it's just that shock factor, isn't it? And the ripple effect that a murder like this has.
Yeah, definitely. So going back a bit, when Alan left school, he went on to work for a printers in Bourne, and he loved that job, but he left it due to redundancy. And one of the other things that he loved was horticulture and being outside. So he started working in that environment and worked in quite a few nurseries before going on to start his own small business as a gardener, which again was something he loved. But one of the things about that is when winter comes around, obviously gardening businesses slow down quite a bit. So to supplement his income, Alan started working for Sainsbury's on a night shift in Bourne, and he started doing that from 2006 onwards. And again, all of his colleagues here absolutely loved him. He was very well liked. Everybody said he was really easy to get along with, and he loved working there.
Yeah, by all accounts, he really enjoyed it and enjoyed the team camaraderie that they had on the night shift. And again, I think it goes to show how well loved he was. I don't know how many people know this case or how much they know about it, but because it is still an ongoing investigation, it's a live investigation, there is currently a reward out. His colleagues at Sainsbury's have helped to raise £40,000 of that, which is just amazing.
Yeah,
It really
absolutely
is.
unbelievable.
So the total reward is £50,000, if anybody knows anything anywhere. 40,000 of it, like I said, been raised by colleagues, and then 10,000 of it's been put forward by the charity Crime Stoppers. But like you say, unbelievable, and just again goes to show how well liked and loved he was.
It does. Alan was married at one point, and although he was separated from his ex-wife Joanne at the time of his murder, they were still extremely close as well, weren't they? They were very close friends, and he still did work in her garden and stuff like that. And again, I think that just shows the character and the nice person he must have been.
Yeah, because if you're going to be able to stay friends with your ex and your ex still thinks so highly of it's got to be testament to the relationship that you had and built. They were together like 17 years before they ended up going their separate ways. But like you said, they stayed really close. He still phoned her frequently, helped her out a lot, which I think is really lovely.
It is, isn't it?
Yeah.
So, some of the other things that Alan was really passionate about was he had an absolute love of photography, and it was more the wet film, old style cameras rather than the new digital ones that people use more so today.
He must have been a good photographer.
He must have been. It takes a talent, doesn't it, wet film?
Yeah, I started out years ago on wet film, and let me tell you, I was glad when it moved digital. One digital thing I was happy about.
It's such a great medium, but if you're photographing anything where you need to get it that once, you haven't got a chance to go back, have you? You've either got it or you haven't, and you don't know till after. So
Yeah, and crime scene photography is nerve-wracking, isn't it?
yeah, I was glad it was digital when we were in.
Me too.
One of his other loves was motorbikes, and he had a black Triumph Speed himself. And he had another vehicle as well. He had a red Jaguar that he absolutely loved and was often seen driving about in.
I think there's some images of it, and it was a really nice car.
It's a beautiful car, isn't it?
Yeah,
It must have been his pride and joy, I bet.
I can imagine.
And one of the other things that Alan loved to do, like you've said, he was a loved member of the community and he liked to go out and socialise in his local pub where he would chat with friends and other locals in there over a pint and a packet of peanuts.
Good choice.
Very good choice.
I believe he was also partial to a little bag of mini cheddars, your fave.
It is absolutely my favourite. He's got some strong snack choices
He
in
really
there.
does.
So there was nothing really controversial in Alan's life. Like you've said, he had no known enemies and he was just going about his general life in his local community. So I think, again, this is why it's such a shock to everybody that this level of violence happened to Alan of all people.
Yeah, and the day that he was murdered, so Alan was actually murdered on Wednesday, the 21st of October, 2009. From the police investigation and from the trying to track his movements backwards to see his last confirmed movements, he, by all accounts, had just had a really routine day. So in the afternoon, CCTV had placed him at a Morrison's supermarket in Stamford, which is just another little village over. And then from there, he was seen in his local pub, the Willoughby Arms. Like you said, he enjoyed going in and socialising and having a pint and a packet of peanuts with the locals. So he'd gone there and had a pint and was seen there socialising. And then he left there at 6:30 p.m. So this is the Willoughby Arms in Little Bytham, again, just down the road from Lound where he lived. And that wasn't really unusual for Alan. And he left at 6:30 p.m. and wasn't seen again. And I think that because they couldn't find any further movements or any more confirmed movements, it was believed that from 6:30 p.m. from him leaving that pub that he returned home that evening, and everybody that had come into contact with him had said that he was just normal, no signs of distress or anything like that. It was just a normal routine day.
Yeah, like you say, there's no more movements after that. And the next thing that anybody knows is on the 24th of October, the Saturday, where a colleague starts getting extremely concerned about him because he's not been in touch with anyone, which is very unlike him. He hasn't turned up for work, which apparently, again, was very unlike him, particularly to not say that he wasn't going to be coming in for whatever reason. So they got concerned, and one of his friends and colleagues went over to his house to make sure that everything was okay. And when she attended, the front door was slightly ajar, and she didn't just want to go in. So she went round the side of the house, and yet again, that was ajar. So she felt a bit uncomfortable and that something wasn't quite right. So she went to the house next door, which I believe was Alan's landlord, and they decided to enter the property together to see if he was okay. And unfortunately, on entering Alan's property, they found Alan deceased in his living room, and it was evident that something violent had happened within there. So this is where the police investigation really starts, isn't it? So they contacted the local authorities who all went down to the scene to establish what had happened, and this is where our crime scene starts from, really, isn't it?
Yeah, a number of the officers on that job have reported that it's one of the worst things and one of the worst crime scenes that they've ever seen. And initially, the police didn't put out full information about what had happened within that scene because it was so brutal. And it wasn't until a bit further down the line where they started to reveal more details of what had actually happened. Because by all accounts, Alan was last seen on the 21st of October, and for whatever reason, the police actually believe he was murdered on Thursday, the 22nd of October. But they don't know whether he's been murdered specifically on that day or whether this incident's gone on for a couple of days, because there was evidence within of Alan actually being tortured. So it's any time really from him last being seen on the 21st of October at 6:30 to him then being found on the 24th. But like I said, the police, for whatever reason, seem to believe that it's more likely to be Thursday the 22nd. So I imagine they've probably had a forensic pathologist down there and have assessed the crime scene. And from whatever they've found in the crime scene, maybe levels of decomposition of the body. Also, with tracing his last movements, they've managed to make that estimated time of death.
Yeah. And like you say, the levels of violence they witnessed within there were just absolutely horrendous. And it sounds like, unfortunately and really sadly, Alan was tortured over that period. And some of the details of that torture are horrific. It's beyond anything I've ever seen as a crime scene investigator before. So one of the things that came out is that Alan's hands had been bound with sellotape, and I believe his feet had been bound too. And overall, there was 11 meters worth of tape had been used there, which just seems a crazy amount as well, doesn't it?
It is a lot of tape, yeah.
A hell of a lot. And as well as being bound, Alan had a number of different injuries that were quite horrific, really. He's been stabbed multiple times. He'd been stabbed in the head, in the eye, and he'd also had his throat cut as well. So it's just such a lot of violence, that, isn't it?
Yeah, I think the multiple stab wounds that he'd had were what made them believe that it was quite prolonged and that it's happened over a period of time. And then the cut to the throat was the actual fatal cut, the last cut essentially that took Alan's life. And that's why, again, I think it's a sustained period of torture. For what specific purpose, they're unsure, but they believe it's to get his bank cards, which again, we'll talk a bit more about. But what I think is quite sick and awful is that even after they'd cut his throat and killed him, what they then found was a big wound to the back of his neck and head. And it was so bad, what the police have suggested is that they think that the offenders were trying to decapitate him.
Like you say, after he's already passed away, like, what's the purpose of that? Like, it's just another mutilation, isn't it? It's just horrendous. You just cannot fathom it.
No, it's vicious, isn't it? That's what it is.
Yeah.
Like, even stabbing somebody multiple times before slitting the throat is vicious and vile. Then going on to injure them further post-death is a level of, it shows a lack of humanity.
Yeah.
And a level of violence that I personally can't fathom.
No, I'm with you. And again, this level of violence is extremely unusual, particularly in stranger murders as well. Like, usually if there's a murder where people are really close and there's passion involved, sometimes you see really ferocious attacks involved in that, don't you? But a stranger murder like this, it's just unheard of, really. We don't see much of this at all.
No, fortunately, thankfully, few and far between.
Yeah. And that one, the stabbing to the eye as well, the thought of that is just, oh, it goes right through us. Kind of anything with eyes, I'm not good with mine. So,
I mean, there is that. It is a strange one, isn't it? Stabbing somebody in the eye.
Oh.
Again, not something I've seen.
No, I've not seen that. No. And again, it does suggest torture, unfortunately, doesn't it? And I think this must be even harder to take for his family and friends, knowing that somebody's been murdered is bad enough, but to think that they've suffered like that, I think, is just horrendous.
Well, it must be that knowing that they've suffered and they knew that he knew he was going to die, essentially. It's not just quick and over and done with, is it?
No.
And you try and put yourself in Alan's shoes And the fear and terror that must have been running through him is just so sad and heartbreaking. And like you say, for his family, then to know that he was going through that before dying and then dying at such a awful and savage death is absolutely heartbreaking. And then on top of that, compound that, and again, we'll dig into it more, but there's no real reason, like there's no full motive that's been established. Like there's theories, but not, yes, this is a definitive motive. This is why he's being murdered. And then also it's the who. It's still unsolved, and this family have not had any justice whatsoever for Alan's murder. And it's
No,
just heartbreaking.
it really is. My heart breaks for them thinking about it. And like you say, because there was so much evidence found, it is extremely unusual that we don't have an idea of a who. So, some of the evidence that was found at the crime scene, firstly, and something that's really significant, that, like you mentioned earlier, if you find this at a scene, usually you'd be rubbing your hands together and be like, yes, we've got to get somebody based from this, is they found some blood and that didn't belong to Alan, and they've got a full male DNA profile from that.
Yeah.
But it's been ran through, it first he was ran through the UK database and it didn't come back with any hits. It's now been checked against multiple international databases and it's still outstanding.
Which again is unusual because you'd expect that somebody committing this level of violent crime to at some point have been recorded. It'd be really unusual for this to be somebody's first
First,
crime.
yeah, yeah, it
And it's
definitely
normally
would.
somebody who's living in the criminal world. So you would kind of expect that they would be recording and expect a DNA hit, like you say.
You would, wouldn't you? And it doesn't mean that somebody hasn't committed crime before this, but they've never been recorded for a
Never,
crime.
yeah.
Which again, like you say, you just wouldn't expect that in something like this. They've got to have committed crime before to do this. I just cannot imagine a normal person who has never done anything in their life all of a sudden going and torturing someone to this extent. It just doesn't happen, does it?
No, it also as well goes to show some of the weaknesses, I guess, in forensic evidence because often people think you've got a DNA profile, great, that's the crime solved. You've got a fingerprint, great, that's the
Yeah,
crime solved. And actually, if there's nobody recorded on those databases, those DNA and fingerprints are just going to sit there and sit there until potentially somebody is recorded, or it might never happen. So just because the evidence is there doesn't mean that's it, light bulb, case solved.
exactly. It's a comparative science, isn't it? Which is the thing we always say. It's comparative science. If you haven't got anything to compare it to, it's dead in the water. There's nothing you can do with it. Like you say, that doesn't mean that this won't be useful. If anybody comes forward or if any suspects are highlighted coming forward, they can easily be either eliminated if they had nothing to do with this or identified. So hopefully it will come in useful down the line.
Yes, and don't forget, people, again, £50,000 reward up. So if there is anybody out there that knows anything, bring it forward.
Yeah. You would hope people would come forward with this sort of stuff anyway, but sometimes that is an incentive, isn't it? If people are fearful or anything like that, because as we've said, it's clearly a violent person. Somebody might be a bit nervous of coming forward with a name for somebody to do with something like this.
Yeah, definitely. So there's that DNA profile that was found, like you say, that gave a full male profile. And then in addition to that, there was a footwear pattern found in the crime scene as well, wasn't there?
There was.
And it was a Converse pattern. So there's actually a picture of this and it says Converse through it, which is a good start because it gives the investigators a clue straight away to what kind of
Yeah.
footwear they were looking for. But actually, they did a lot more digging around it. And at the time, it was found that there was only two specific uppers with this specific tread pattern, wasn't it? So again,
Yeah.
that's managed to narrow it down quite significantly. And I believe at the time that these were only being sold throughout North America and Europe. So it was really narrowed down to two specific models, which again, usually is really good information
Yeah, it's tightening the
and really
net, isn't
useful.
it?
Yeah,
Because when you say Converse, I bet you most people think of the standard ones, and these just look so different, don't they?
they do. And if you think we've got that really unusual footwear pattern that's been narrowed down to only two models, in combination with a full male DNA profile, these are two really good forensic evidence sources that would normally help drive an investigation.
They are, like we were saying before, the ones that you would be so chuffed if you found them within a scene.
Most definitely. One of the other things that was also found was a fragment of a bus ticket as well. And this was actually found in the tape that had been used to bind Alan. And from the research, I've not really seen clearly what information that gave police, because sometimes
No.
from a bus ticket you can get quite a bit of intelligence information, can't you? You can see like maybe where they've got on, what bus they've been on, the date and the time.
Yeah.
It's difficult to know how much intelligence information was on this bus ticket. I'm sure probably not that much, otherwise it would have been followed up. It was said to be a partial fragment. But what it does show and suggest is that the offender or offenders that have done this have known the area quite well and also been using local public transport. So they've been moving around the area.
It does, doesn't it? Because, like you were saying there, I think the only bit of information that I've seen from the ticket was that it was from a local bus, and that's all the information that's been seen anywhere about it.
That's such a shame, isn't it?
I know, like you say, because there's often a date, a time, and it gives you somewhere to start looking for potential CCTV because a lot of buses have that on board. So it is a shame that there's no more information in there.
It is. And so they're the three main key pieces of evidence, aren't they, as well as the tape that was used to bind Alan,
They are.
which again is quite a lot of forensic evidence. But then following on from that, the offender or offenders have gone on to use Alan's bank cards in and around the local area in nearby local villages, which has meant that actually they've stayed local afterwards
Yeah.
and used his bank cards over 3 or 4 days after the initial incident. So imagine committing that kind of violent crime and then having the balls to stay that local.
I know, it's crazy, isn't it?
You'd think you'd run like hell, wouldn't you?
You would think so. Like you say, they've got some neck on them to be sticking around after doing something like that. And like you say, it was multiple different cash points that used, wasn't it, around both Bourne and Stamford. And one of the other things that was quite striking is the police said they think they must have known the area quite well because they managed to avoid a lot of CCTV.
Yeah.
And then where they were on CCTV even, they had a cap on. And then there was also a really distinctive scarf used, wasn't there? Where quite often they would cover the lower of the face as well.
Yeah, so it's a stripy scarf and it is quite striking and stands out, doesn't it, even on CCTV? So
It
that's it.
does.
That's the other evidence type that we've got that again is usually really helpful is the CCTV of the movements of the offender around the local area and local villages using Alan's cards. But like you say, they've been quite clever because mostly they've avoided it and then disguised themselves quite a bit
Yeah.
when using it. Also, there was a woman that said that she saw two men at a cash machine at a time specifically when Alan's card was being used.
Yeah.
And she also managed to give the police a description from which they've created an EFIT. So there is dedicated pages on Lincolnshire Police's website to this murder, and you can see actually the footwear that they've identified and also the CCTV images, can't you?
You can. I think the e-fit's on there as well, isn't it? So there's
Yeah.
a lot of information on there for people to see. So if anyone was in that area, it's a really good source to go over and have a look to see if you can recognize the person, or if you think you might know anything at all. The thing with the card machines as well is at a few cash points, they did actually manage to withdraw small amounts of money. It was only a few £100 that had managed to have been withdrawn, but it does suggest then that the offenders had Alan's PIN code. And this is one of the reasons that they think that the torture might have taken place to try and gain Alan's PIN code so they could take this cash out at the cash points. Interestingly, they did get some money at some, but later on, when they tried to use them, they were unable to get in. So they've tried multiple times as well, haven't they?
Yeah. I mean, I think this is one of the interesting things is that so the suggested motive and the strongest theory for the motive is robbery
Yeah.
because they have taken Alan's bank card and then also, like you say, the belief is that he was likely tortured for his PIN codes. But then the really sad thing about this is it is just those small bits of cash that they took out. Like it doesn't, again, that doesn't make much sense. So you've gone to all this trouble and then you're taking only like small withdrawals out of the cash machine. Why wouldn't they take a bigger amount?
It's strange, isn't it?
Unless the thought that it might be unusual behavior, so taking a large amount out all at once might alert the bank and make them look at it.
If it's unusual for Alan's behaviour.
Unusual activity, so maybe if the thought if we take a small amount here and a small amount there, it might
Yeah.
not look so strange. So that could have been a reason for that. But still, it's literally a few £100. When you commit a violent crime, one that is so violent, like it's tiring, isn't it? People say it's exhausting because it takes a lot of adrenaline, a lot of energy, a lot of strength, and it takes it out of you. And they've gone to all of that effort for a couple of £100. I can understand why it's the main motive, but it also doesn't
Yes.
really add up.
Yes.
Saying that, there was some conversation about Alan looking like the manager of Sainsbury's. And so, as the offender or offenders potentially confused him with him, so thinking that he might have more money than he potentially had. And also, the other thing is E-type Jag was parked on the
Yes.
front. And so, again, that may indicate to someone money or wealth.
Yeah, because looking from the outside, an old vintage E-type beautiful car, it does look like somebody could have quite a lot of wealth to have something like that, doesn't it?
Yeah. So it does make sense that robbery is the main motive.
Particularly because Alan wasn't known to have any enemies or have any criminal past or anything like that. So it does make sense that it would be something like that, doesn't it?
Yeah, but then you think, is it an opportunist? So whoever has come to the scene has got knife, also got tape, unless the tape was Alan's and from inside Alan's property. I guess that's something we don't know, but that's a suggestion that they've potentially brought things to the scene.
Yeah, because that's what the police have indicated. Think it's probably brought, don't they? But they don't know 100% if it was brought to scene or was from Alan's property.
So if somebody's walking around with knife and tape, that would suggest targeted attack.
It
And
would.
then, but then also, there's no clear reason for why anybody would specifically target Alan. So then you think, is it opportunist? Has somebody come by and saw the Jag and thought, oh, money,
Yeah.
let's force entry? Or knock and then force entry?
Yeah, that's the other thing with that, isn't it? If it's somebody who knows the local area so well, we've talked about them using the buses, using the cash points, avoiding CCTV. Is it potentially somebody that actually Alan knows, and when they've knocked, he's answered the door and let them in? We just don't know, do we?
No, sadly, it is impossible to know. I think the other thing to talk about here is as well is actually the number of offenders because, again, that's unknown. Now, the level of violence that's taken place and the strength that it must have taken to pin Alan down and to bind him, there is talk of potentially 2 offenders.
Yeah.
And also the woman at the cash machine said she saw 2 men.
Yeah.
But on the flip side of that, there's only one other DNA profile. So obviously there was Alan's DNA in there, but only one of the profile, that DNA profile that they found, blood from a different area, which would suggest that the offender or one of the offenders has been injured. So it was only one more DNA profile. There was only one footwear pattern found.
Yeah.
And on the CCTV that's been put out, there's only one man walking around and nearby. So it could potentially still be one person.
It could, like you say, be one, but it would take a hell of a lot of strength to do something like that, overthrow him and bind him, just one person alone. But it is possible. And like you say, there's been one DNA profile found and one footwear mark found at the scene. Now, obviously, that could be the DNA profiles from one offender and the footwear mark is from another. So it still could be 2 separate people. But it's unusual only one footwear pattern to have been found if there was 2, isn't it?
Yeah, you'd more expect to see 2 different patterns.
Mm.
I suppose the other thing is it would make more sense for there to be 2, like you say, because it'd take a hell of a lot to overthrow somebody and bind them, you would think. But in the same vein, people go into fight, flight, or freeze. And if somebody comes at you and forces yourself into your home and has a knife, actually at that point, you could be so frightened that you freeze. And also, if you think somebody's there to rob you, you could become quite compliant and just say, yeah, I'm not fighting back. Take what you want. Take my wallet. Take it. And if somebody bowls you over, knocks you off your feet and you're down, or you've already been stabbed once, you're going to be much easier to overthrow.
Definitely. And I don't think anybody can definitely say how they would react in one of those situations until you're in something like that.
No.
And from everything we've seen about Alan, he doesn't seem like he's an aggressive guy. So but potentially he has got a fright and has been easily overthrown.
Yeah, it is highly possible. And also the woman seeing 2 men at the cash machine, just because she saw 2 men, it doesn't mean that both of them were necessarily involved. One of them's there, he's got Alan's card and he's using Alan's card to withdraw money from his account. So yet where have you got that card from? That would suggest that you've been in the scene or you've got that card from somewhere. But the person behind could just have been stood behind him in a queue.
Yeah. Or they could even be with him, but it doesn't mean that they've been involved in the crime. So if we went to a cash point and you were using your card, I wouldn't really know if it's your card or somebody else's, would I?
No, that's true.
You don't know. So the person who was with him might actually know nothing about this crime having taken place. They could well have, but they might not have as well. It doesn't mean involvement straight away.
No, that's it. And like I say, the CCTV does tend to pick up one man. One thing that we should say about that man as well, we talked about the distinctive scarf and the fact that he's only been withdrawing small amounts and then disguised his lower face when he has been in CCTV areas. He was described as around 5'9" to 5'11". But what experts analysing the CCTV said that is he had quite an unusual gait. And they think that he had a possible limp, maybe one leg shorter than the other.
Again, that's so distinctive, isn't it?
There are a number of distinctive features from the CCTV and from the EFIT. So all of this evidence coming together, this CCTV intelligence, EFIT intelligence, and the forensic evidence, it is shocking that this isn't solved.
It really is. Going back to Alan's family and friends, that must be so hard for them, knowing all of that evidence is sat there. Me as a scene investigator, listening to that is like, you've got to get somebody for this. So I can only imagine how heartbreaking that must be, knowing you've got all of this sat there and you're just waiting to get the piece that brings it all together.
Yeah. Now, the police have a bit of a theory about this. They haven't got really substantial evidence towards it. But at that point in 2009, there was a large Eastern European community living and working in that area.
Yeah.
And I think it's believed that it could potentially be somebody from Eastern Europe who, after the events, has then fled and gone back.
Yes.
And I think that the lack of information on the databases, then the lack of information, even from the CCTV that's coming forward, things that indicate this may have been the case. So that might be one of the reasons this remains unsolved.
Yeah, because if they've left the area quite quickly after it, because obviously we'll have those reports of the cod being used in the few days after his death. But from there, we've got absolutely nothing, no more sightings or anything like that. So it does suggest somebody could have left the area.
Yeah, and I would think probably whoever it is has left the area really quite quickly. Anybody with any sense, like I say, would have been out there. I'm surprised that they stayed around for the following 2 or 3 days using the bank card around the local villages.
Me too.
Well, I think it might speak volumes about the mentality of the offender or offenders.
It's almost like a bit of cockiness there in doing that, isn't it?
It is, and then quite casual as well, isn't it? Just staying around the area, popping to the local ATMs in the local villages. But I suppose as well, in the same vein, maybe they're keeping an eye on police reports and what's going on because it is such a small area, and recognizing actually it's a couple of days later and he still hasn't been found. Like, we're getting away with this.
Yeah, potentially.
And then when the police presence kicks in and the investigation starts up and escalate, then off on the tours.
Yeah. Run away at that point.
Well, yeah, if you had any sense, you would, wouldn't you?
You would think so.
You'd get out the UK as quick as you possibly could. If you were not, particularly if you're not from the UK and you had a home base to go back to, one way you knew you could disappear and you weren't recorded.
Yeah.
You'd slip back into the shadows for sure. Now, there were a number of arrests made, but they came to nothing. And then there was one guy who was classed as a person of interest that the police wanted to speak to. It was a Polish guy. I'm not even going to try and pronounce his name. Because I can't.
Yeah, our pronunciation's not that good.
But again, that came to nothing, sadly. And then one thing that the police did, which has never been done before, which is really interesting, is set up the first UK dedicated site for a single murder investigation. So they did this 3 years after Alan's murder in 2012. That website's no longer running, but like we said earlier, if you go on to Lincolnshire Police's website, there are dedicated pages to this murder which tell you about Alan, give you background about him, also give you details of the investigation. Like say, you can see pictures of the shoes and of the EFIT and the CCTV images. So it tells you everything that they know to this point, and then also gives you information about the reward. So it is still set up, but that one in 2012 was the UK's first ever dedicated site.
It was, which is quite interesting, actually, because I don't recall actually that I've seen a full site like that done even after that. There probably is. I've just not seen one. Like you say, for it to be external to the police's site, a full website dedicated is really interesting. But now, like you say, it's embedded onto Lincolnshire Police's as a campaign page on there. There has been a number of appeals over the years to try and get some additional information to try and help solve this case. But unfortunately, that hasn't happened and it is still unsolved today. And it'll be coming up 17 years since Alan's murder in October this year.
Yeah, which is a really long time for a case to be ongoing and for there to be nobody coming forward, like we say, when there's this amount of evidence, and also for the family not to have justice and also clear answers as to why. Like we've talked about the motive of robbery, which seems like the most likely. We believe it's strange murder, but has it been targeted because of the Jag, or is it mistaken identity, or is it just an opportunist? But again, all of these things are really quite unclear. All we do know is that there's a large level of violence and only a small amount of money being taken to a kind man who's well loved in his community in a small sleepy village. Like, really, none of it adds up for your usual crime type at all, does it? And so
No.
all of these questions remain unanswered for the family, which must be awful. And it just really goes to show that sometimes, investigations don't fail because evidence is missing.
Yeah.
Because in this case, there's a lot of evidence. We're just missing the identity, and that recorded somebody. But somebody somewhere does know something and does know who that man on that CCTV footage is.
They do, absolutely. And with that, I think that might be a nice place to wrap up this episode. So, for everyone listening, please remember there is a £50,000 reward if anybody comes forward with any information that can help solve this case. And go and check out Lincolnshire's website if you want to know or see more. Like we say, there's the images on there from the CCTV, there's the e-fit, and there's the photographs of the shoe uppers that left the footwear mark at the crime scene. We'll include the link to Lincolnshire's website in our description. So if you want to check it out, just go to that link. And hopefully we can raise some awareness of this case and try and get some of the answers for Alan's family and try to get some justice for Alan.
That would be lovely, wouldn't it?
It would. That's the ultimate goal, really, isn't it?
Yes, yeah.
So thank you to everyone for tuning in for this episode. We hope that you found it interesting. And like we say, hopefully we can help raise some awareness of this case. If you are enjoying what you're hearing, please remember to subscribe or give us a like or a follow. All of that means the world to us. Or share it with somebody else who you think might enjoy hearing from myself and Ange.
Who wouldn't? Who wouldn't enjoy hearing from
Exactly.
us?
So we will be back in a fortnight's time where we'll take you back under the barrier tape.